So good morning. Sorry to say this, today I did not find very exciting articles in the Hindu newspaper. But however, one thing which I really found good for the exam is the relevance of IPSA and comparison of IPSA with BRICS. So because these are the two multilateral forums which India is engaged in, and is BRICS obscuring the image of the IPSA? It is what is the major point of discussion over here. Now let us touch the background a bit. In 2003, the Brasilia Declaration, it has led to the establishment of IPSA. So the three basic points in this declaration are, all these three countries are the democracies, and three of them are the developing countries, and they want to have a desire, they are having a desire to play a larger role on the global scale. So, getting a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council is one of their ambitions. Now, if you see on the BRICS, the BRICS is, from 2008, it has gained its significance because of global recession. So now, if you can see, the BRICS is more of based on anti-West agenda in G20. So the G20 is divided into two factions. One is developed countries represented by G7 and the BRICS representing the view of the emerging economies. Now in this context in 2011, previously it was BRIC, in 2011 it converted into BRICS at the Sanya summit. The South Africa was joined in Sanya summit into the BRICS. What happened because of this joining? Now, the strength of the democratic forces have increased in the BRICS on one side. On the other side, if you carefully observe, the BRICS represents the status quo in the global power equations with China and Russia are playing a major important role. On the other hand, if you see the economic size of China, it has a huge dominant role played in BRICS. Now in this context, let us see how it is affecting the IPSA. Now IPSA is altogether a different ground, which is made with different priorities. Now, the China-centric BRICS, it is overshadowing the India's traditional role as an ideological leader of the global South. And the economic might of the BRICS has obscured has made the IPSA irrelevant. Now in this context, what is the redefined role IPSA can take up? This is what is the thing which we are discussing about. Now if you see, the South Africa has joined the BRICS in 2011. In 2010 itself, the South Africa and China signed for a strategic partnership agreement and they are trying to upgrade it. And added to that, the competition for resources between India and China in Africa is very intense. Now, as UN significance to the influence of international events is decreasing, and its inability to deter the unilateral actions by the powerful countries is making importance for the other multilateral agencies. Now in this context, if you see, in Syria, Crimea, Yemen, all the countries, big countries, take up a unilateral actions without consulting the UN. In this context, the IPSA took a common stand, all these three countries took a common stand on various issues of Western intervention. So, what are the new defining roles? So we can look into drug trafficking, money laundering, terrorism, maritime security, freedom of navigation, energy security. All these are the common purposes among these. Now there is one interesting point happened in 2013. The soy oil, generally it is, China is the major import of soy oil from Latin America. Because of some other issue, China stopped importing the soy oil from Argentina and Brazil. And finally India has rescued them by importing this soy oil. So India enjoys a good relations in Latin America. And this IPSA, it's a pro-democratic forum and it has a significance. All these three countries, India, Brazil and South Africa, one or the other way, they are suffering from the growing might of the China. So, the IPSA has more relevance now than in the past. That is what is the opinion of the author. Now, let's see the Arun Jaitley's speech on Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. What is this is the judicial activism and courts, they are supervising the many cases of corruption now. Because of that, the investigative agencies are becoming defensive and they are following the golden rule, somehow make a case. So it means that many of the innocents are also booked under the case to prove or to show that the court that they are doing something in that particular act. So in this case, what Finance Minister says is the Prevention of Corruption Act 1988, it was made to the conditions before economic reforms. And it was many ways responsible for the bureaucratic inertia and bypassing. So in this context, we need to revisit this law to have a proactive, risk-averse bureaucracy so that we can make, or else the decision making can be made more committed and also the credibility of it can be improved. Now, what are the amendments majorly the government is proposing? Various terms are vaguely defined in the Prevention of Corruption Act, such as what is the meaning of corrupt means, public interest, what is meant by pecuniary advantage, etc. Now this particular law, this vagueness, they are going to clearly define. So these are the things he talked about. And one important thing with regard to the taxes, what he said is the government is not going to levy any retrospective tax. And he has used a very good word, that is India is going to have a non-adversarial tax regime. So the investors can happily come and invest in India. And next is the labor market. Very good report this is. This is after 20 years of Beijing declaration. This particular report is given by the United Nations women, UN women. So what it says is the gender gap in the labor markets is increasing. So remember the name of the report, the progress of world women. The progress of the world's women. So there are two specific things they talked about. One is the gender wage gap. It means the differences between the salaries or wages paid between men and women. And next is labor participation rate. How many women are participating in the labor? The labor participation rate and gap in the labor participation rate. Now if you carefully observe that both these things are very wide in India, the gaps are wide. And added to that, most of the cases women are involved with the low paid and insecure informal sector. And added to that, they have to bear the dual burden of caring of the family and also taking up the responsibility. And one more thing is, if you take in the global average, half of the women are working or participating actively in the labor force. If it comes to India, only 1/3 of the women are actively participating in the labor force. It shows a clear discrimination towards the women. And across the women with the children, they are low paid and discriminated highest when compared to the others. So these are the things which are talked about. Next is United States and Japan. They are talking about revisiting their particular defense rules. Now, Shinzo Abe, he is visiting United States, and last week we discussed that he wants to sell the bullet trains to America between New York and Washington DC. Now, whatever be the case, now the country which is declared as pacifism as its policy it cannot wage war on any other nation. So in this context, what has happened is, in the present article, Abe calls for proactive pacifism in Japan. Probably this particular thing is coming up to counter the growing influence of the China. And already we know that the China and Japan has territorial disputes with regard to Senkaku Islands. The Senkaku Islands. Now, the constitution was recently revisited and now it can allow for collective defense. In line with this, the existing defense rules are revisited and revised. Japan could come to aid of the USA forces threatened by a third country. As of now, till now, what is the situation is this. Japanese forces could assist the American troops only if they were operating in direct defense of Japan. It means any other third country also Japan and US can operate together. That is what is the major change in the defense rules over here. And the next article is the Maritime Silk Road. So in transcontinental rail line which the Russia is talking about, and Mongolia is talking about its steppe road. Now India is talking about Mausam, and also India is talking about Spice Road. Now China said it is interested to make the steppe road, transatlantic railway, Mausam and Spice Road of India also into the part of its maritime Silk Road. And Nepal disaster. So, if you observe carefully the Nepal disaster, the Nepal is already high on the disaster list because it is exactly lies on the fault line. Now, the geological susceptibility is very high, but the preparedness of the Nepal for the disaster is very low. In this context, understand that earthquake is the most difficult disaster to predict for. And added to that, the constitutional crisis in the Nepal is one of the reasons. Because of this crisis, all the resources, they are centralized in the Kathmandu, and also the local constitution of the local governments is not yet possible. So, the local governments do not have resources and they are very unprepared for this disaster. Now, with regard to the preparedness, mitigation and prevention, etc., if you take these matters, so the Japan is a advanced technology and advanced methods with regard to the earthquake disaster prevention. So try to observe what the Japanese does with regard to earthquake prevention. And India is also almost 30 plus areas, cities in India, they are also disaster earthquake prone. So we also need to have the knowledge. Now in this again, in this paper, now what is the relevance of IPSA in the growing importance of the BRICS is an important area. That's where you need to focus your discussion today on. What is its importance? One is, it's a democratic force. It's a pro-democratic association. And the second thing is, if you talk about IPSA, there are many things common in them. One is UN Security Council reform. And added to that, every country has to protect its sphere of influence. Now if you take Indian Ocean is the sphere of influence of India where China is showing its might. And fourth thing is, if you see the BRICS is dominated by China because of its economic might, we need to have a counter force of the democratic forces where IPSA can do that. And competition with China exists for all these three countries. So they also face the problem from the growing importance of the China in their backyard. So that is the reason why IPSA can act as an independent forum. And China previously suggested that IPSA has to be merged with BRICS. But however, India did not take it forward, and it's a positive step. And added to that, he spoke about many other areas where we can extend the cooperation with regard to IPSA. And thank you very much.